Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. A lot of things have been going on. You would think it would, I mean, it's Christmas time, so oh gosh, I forgot to wear my hat. Daggone it.
Santa hat.
Uh, anyway, a lot of stuff going on. You were at the Dome there a couple of weeks ago. Tell us about that, Chad.
Yeah, what an event. 35,000 of your closest race fans packed in a dome watching late models and modifieds race on the shortest track in America. It's just wild. It's the atmosphere. I mean, if you haven't went yet, and if you haven't been a part of it, you have to go and experience it. It's not. I mean, Flow Broadcast does a great job, obviously, but there's nothing like being in that room and when all the pre-race stuff is going on and they drop the green flag and the hair on your neck is standing up. I mean, it really it really makes you understand why we love this sport so much when you get to see something on that scale. After the Friday night fight, when the dude ran across the whole arena to get that other guy, we were at the hotel in the lobby, and the TV was on, and I looked up and I seen that fight, and I'm like, well, how do they put Flow on the TV in here? And one of my guys said that's Sports Center, and I was like,
Oh,
wow, we made ESPN. So super pumped for Cody and everything he's done there. Cody and Emma do such a great job, and it's actually a massive event for us. We set up, in the pits and up in the grandstands because there's just so many people, and so many people in the stands don't buy the pit pass to go down there. They make it kind of tough. It's a kind of a logistical nightmare to go in both places, but so we feel it's important to be up top and down below. So we have a lot of fun, take a lot of people there. My family goes, and it's an unbelievable atmosphere and event. And I mean, you can naysay it all you want and criticize, but it's wild, and you gotta see it in person. So super pumped about that, how it went. It was great to see so many of our customers, and that's why we go and do it.
well, I mean, we're in the entertainment business. And if you weren't entertained by that event, I don't know how you could be more entertained. I watched every part of that thing except for the fence rebuilds, but I
Yeah.
watched every part of that on Flow, and I was just amazed at just like the T-shirt stands when they went down that hallway up above, and there was rows and rows and rows and rows of T-shirts, and I'm just like, holy moly! And people everywhere. And when they said they had 35,000 people, I'm like, 35,000? That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an accomplishment. I think that's the highest attended short track race in the country. I mean, it's
Well, it'd have to be, yeah.
the world gets what 25,000 or something like that. So, I mean, it's hard to put it into words how cool it is and how awesome it is to hang out with all the people that love what we love.
Yeah, no, it definitely, like I said, I mean, of course, the two main shows, they were one from the poll, but they weren't giveaways. I mean, those guys were challenged the whole time.
Yeah,
And so, the five late model, he probably had a little bit more of an edge than the 777 or whatever number the modified was. But, you know, shout out to Jervich Motorsports. I mean, shocks on that baby made that thing, I mean, look pretty good. I was pretty impressed. I'm like, damn,
yeah,
anything that can survive that kind of, I mean, them guys put them things through some serious abuse.
yeah. There's a lot of air maneuvers.
Oh my God. But it's cool to watch. That's actually the first time I watched the whole event, all the days.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's pretty cool. No doubt about that. So what's new and exciting? Anything new you got today?
Well, I mean, we've been working hard. The holiday season was pretty good to us, so we had a lot of orders. We've been debuting new products and launching the new stuff, and I think the catalogs are going in the mail this week. So everybody should get their new catalog. We handed out a lot at the Dome, so we're excited about that. And build season seems to be in full swing, so the orders are trickling out, and so it's going pretty good here.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed. Austin shipped out quite a few packages today, and I mean, like I said, majority of the time, I mean, the shop's been really busy, and the shop room's been pretty busy. But the phones were real busy all day today, and that's stayed pretty consistent, because from time to time, it depends on what you listen to. There's always that doom and gloom thing. But boy, I'm not seeing it in the racing industry because, like I said, I watched that dome deal. 35,000 people watched that thing in person, not counting how many ever people watched it on Flow. I mean, I was thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, okay, Jeffrey says, "Happy holidays." Don's checking in from Appleton, Wisconsin, and Amy said to mention the schools. One thing we've got the chassis schools coming up. We look forward to that every year. Excited about going back to Pennsylvania. Not super thrilled about the traveling aspect of it, but I enjoy once we get to Pennsylvania. Joel's got such an awesome place out there, and it's just I don't know. The Eastern guys that it's a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of good customers out there. It's a lot of fun. Of course, we always enjoy the guys here in Iowa and the ones that come to the Iowa schools. Right now, we've only got 5 spots left for the Sport Mod 2-link, 3-link school. So if anybody's looking, that'd be a great Christmas present for somebody. So you want to think about that. Same thing with the 4-link school and the stock car school. Mike Nichols is going to be back for him and Paul Berger are going to be back for the stock car school along with Troy Jervitz. Um, 4-link school, we're going to have Tom Barry. Tom's always a good guest and very knowledgeable and has been very successful in his career. So we're looking forward to that. Cam Reimers is going to actually not be going to Arizona, so he's going to be around to be part of the 2-link school. And of course, we've got Billy from Wehrs Machines going to be there for that. So we've got an excellent group. Rex Merritt's going to be there from AFCO, and so yeah, looking forward to it. I'm excited. I've been working on the 2-link book here lately, and it's going well, and so I'm excited about it. Jesse says Bobby Lippa. Yeah, that's right. Now I remember his name. I actually had never heard of him before, but man, that kid. I mean, how can you go in there in a deal like that and have a clean sweep, set fast time, win the heat, win the qualifier, and then win the A main itself? That was pretty. That boy did a pretty impressive job. Scott says, Bob and Chad, what are your thoughts on the trend in some of the modifieds going to high numbers of indexing on the left rear? I'm hearing numbers between 25 and 35 degrees. What are the pros and cons of doing that? That's all yours, Chad.
Well, I think, normal indexing, if you will, starts about 3 degrees at ride height, and I'll go to, 20, 22, a lot of variables in there. So obviously the trend is to get, more dropout, get the blade in the air, get the drive angle. And, some guys just cam it over and let it hit the 4-link rod on the bottom and let it ride there. It takes the bind out of the top rod. So it seems to be a pretty good trend. The problem is when you cam that far over and you get that far, that's why you got to make really strong lower bars. So we made a billet bent lower bar that was super strong. Jake Tim came up with that design, and it's been outlawed by by USRA, USMTS, IMCA. So there's pros and cons. The pro is that you get a lot of drive angle, a lot of blade. I still feel like you need to control the steer. So as long as you're doing that and controlling the steer and not getting, over rotated with too much roll steer, obviously there's something there. Guys are winning with it.
Awesome. Well, I have to really compliment our guest from 2 weeks ago, Donald Murdy. I was very impressed with that young man. He did an awesome job. I can't speak highly enough about him. I was very pleased, and for 19 years old, very professional. I was just, yeah, definitely have to compliment him. He's been raised well, so no doubt about that. That was fun. We're going to try to have a guest now. We are going to, our next date is actually the 30th of December, but we're going to actually forego that and come back and start fresh the 6th of January, right after the first of the year. There's so much stuff going on during that holiday period that, people probably aren't going to have time to listen. And so we'll just kind of postpone it. We're working on a couple options for some guest speaker at that deal, and we'll let everybody know as soon as I know for sure what we're going to do. But we're going to try to get more guest speakers coming up, this next year, and keep giving you guys as much information as we possibly can. And we've definitely got room for some questions. So if there's some questions out there that you want to ask and need some answers to, we'll do our best. So go with that and see what's going on. So what's your next schedule start, Chad?
Well, January is looking pretty crazy. We're looking at going to the Springfield show there at Hoosier Tire Midwest does during the UMP banquet. So we'll be there for sure. Then the next weekend is the Chili Bowl, and we're leaning towards going to the Chili Bowl. We haven't been there in a couple years, and we've started to work with one of the teams in the midget sprint car side. So with the Ultra Force machine, so we're contemplating going there. And the third week I'll be going to Texas to the Day Motorsports show. Always awesome to go to Texas and see all the Southern folk down there. So that's a good time. Dave Motorsports does a really good job for us, so we're excited to get back down there. And then the last weekend is your school, so you get to come to Ames there and hang out. And then February is pretty open. I think there's only one thing going on in February, and then March there's 6 shows in 4 weeks. So March is going to be wild. I'm not 25 anymore, so it gets harder to do 4 and 5 weeks in a row. But man, I got a great team here, and they're eager and anxious, and they want to just get on the road and pound the pavement. So that's what we're all about. We're all about going to the racetrack and going to the show and winning with support. You won't see a lot of the manufacturers there, and we feel like it's important to get out. So.
Oh, I think that's definitely a great idea. If you have people that can do it, I think that's just awesome. The more you can get out there in front of the people and actually see the actual customer. That's kind of the problem. Everybody deals with websites and internet and online stores and stuff like that. They don't actually get to see the actual individuals. So when they get to do that, people really appreciate that.
For sure.
Adam, left rear brake floater mounted under the rear end instead of above. Thoughts and advantages. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience with that underneath brake floater. We've always ran the brake floater up above, and I'm a firm believer in the brake floater. Period. I like that idea. I think there's some good advantages. A lot of it has to do with how the driver drives the car. How he is on the brake pedal. If he's a stabber, brake floater might not be good for him. if he's really good at trail braking, I think a brake floater is awesome. In answer to the underneath brake floater, Chad, you're going to have to actually answer that one because I just don't know that much about it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys, trending the last couple years going underneath, and it takes a little bit to wrap your head around it. But when you're on the bottom side, it's actually pulling the rear end forward, trying to pull it up underneath the seat, which is, it kind of does the same thing. It's a little more aggressive because I feel like the rear end is lighter, so the motion to move the rear end and pull it forward is more effective than trying to pick the whole car up with the on the top side. So it's pretty new. I mean, I think Zach was the first one to do it a couple years ago, and we've definitely learned that it's aggressive because it's harder on the chain. So the chain pulls harder on the chassis. So we've had to increase and change the way we mount the chains on different clamps and stuff. So we found some failures there when you go on the bottom side. You got to put a bigger clamp for the chain because it's so aggressive. So. But it's definitely not. I mean, it's one of them things. You're gonna have to rebalance your car. It's not put it on, kiss the trophy queen stuff. You gotta work with it. You gotta put your time in and kind of redo it. But the guys that got it figured out are definitely really fast with it. So, but them guys would be fast on the top too. So, it's just a matter of the feel, but definitely aggressive.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Jeffrey says Taylor would be a great one to see. Um, I don't think I'd have any problem getting her on here. It just kind of, and she's pretty good at talking. So it kind of depends on, we'll put that, I'll put that in place. I know she's down in North Carolina right now. I think she's going to get to drive one of Matt uh, Crafton's modifieds down there sometime. And so that's going to be a good experience for her. Going to be something that's going to have more horsepower and different rear suspension. So that's going to be a great experience. They've got, in fact, we're actually working on her new car right now, new sport mod for next year. So yeah, Taylor would be fun to have on. We'll definitely have to think about that. Scott, follow-up question. When you go to that degree of index, do you need to do anything on the right rear as well?
Well, I mean, that's, we talk all the time about balance, right? So you're going to put that amount of traction in the left rear because it's the trend or whatever, and you get that kind of drive angle. When you offset and anytime you add traction to a tire, okay, if you're going to put that much bar angle on the left rear, you're going to overload the left rear, and the right rear is going to be numb. So when guys talk about they can't feel the right rear, they probably can't feel the right rear because the left rear is so influenced, whether it's bar angle or steer blade. There's a lot of things that over traction a tire, and that's what you're going to see. Is exactly that. You're going to make the right rear unbalanced and numb feeling. So anything you do, no matter what it is, no matter what you try, you always have to think of that secondary reaction that's going to unbalance the car. So, and trends are really, I would say, really popular with that, Bob, right? I mean, when somebody says, oh, you got to try this, it's magic, and you go and do it, and you don't have your three other springs aren't the same as the guy that put that other spring in, and you're out to lunch. Well, you're out to lunch because you unbalanced the car. So whether it's a brake floater on the bottom or indexing, high indexing, no matter what it is, no matter what you're working on, you always have to think of, what did I just do? Okay, I'm trying this, but what did I do to the right rear? Just like you said, you'll do things to make that left rear stand up and get more influence on the left rear, and you're overpowering the right front spring, and you're going to push, you're going to plow. Yeah. So there's so many things, and that's what, if you come to one of the schools, that's what Bob talks about nonstop, is the balance of the car and understanding the phases of the corner and understanding when you do something on entry, it's going to kill your exit. So definitely, you always have to think about that.
Well, and I have yet to see when you do one change to a race car that there isn't a couple other modifications that you have to do. And like Chad said, it's all about balance. And if we increase a bunch of traction on one tire and don't do something to the others, well, like you said, you're going to have a push if it's on the left rear. And it's just So I'm not saying it's not a good idea. You just have to kind of know what you're doing, and you're going to have to do some more stuff. And I would say too, the right rear, you're definitely going to have to load the right rear a little bit more. Otherwise, it's just not going to want to turn when you want it to turn. Um, okay. Bob says alcohol versus gas. Now, I'm going to assume that he is talking about which is the best. Well, once again, you know, gasoline done right is definitely there's a positive to gasoline. I don't think you have the instant horsepower with gasoline that you can have with alcohol. However, you can keep a better balanced car because you're not burning near as much. The alcohol, in my opinion, is going to definitely, especially like a crate motor or something, it's definitely going to liven that motor up and quicken it so that it's a little bit more responsive on the bottom where you have no horsepower to begin with. And so it's going to be a definite advantage there. The disadvantage, of course, is your fuel burn off. You have to plan a little bit more for the end of the race because you're going to definitely burn off more fuel, so your rear percentage is going to go away. So you got to start a little higher. Um, I think they both do a great job. Myself, I kind of lean towards the alcohol. If I had that option, that would be the direction I'd go. I mean, it burns a little cooler. There's some good advantages to it, and the disadvantage of the balance on the car, in my opinion, is minor. You can adjust accordingly. Go out with another 1.5% or rear percent, and kind of maintain the car and have the car come to you at the end. Jerry said Steve is watching. Awesome. Jamie, on the USRA stock car, we can run a chain on the right front. My left front shock are short shaft. Is there a point to putting a chain on it or not? Should I get a standard length shaft put in my shock? Um, I don't really think there would be an advantage. I still would possibly run because what you can do rather than going to the effect of having to have the shock rebuilt and put a longer shaft in it, we've got shaft extensions that are like $15. And I like the shaft extension a lot more for the fact that that's just a way of options. Now, of course, we do a lot of IMCA stuff, and in IMCA you can't run a chain. They basically do the same thing. I still like to see, my starting number be 1.5 inches a drop on that left front, and I don't know. Sometimes I'll choke it up, and in stock car, the disadvantage to a stock car of having not enough drop or like going to a 1 inch drop is they're a little sketchy on side bite to begin with. So when you limit how much the left front comes up, you definitely get more forward traction, but you also take a little bit of side bite out of the car. So we've got some guys that run 2 inches a drop just because of that fact that they just like the way the car drives better. John, your best recommendations for a minor tight entry without affecting the rest of the corner. Hmm.
Left front spring.
Yeah, yeah. If you're a minor tight, one option, of course, if you can run wheel spacers, you can put a wheel spacer, 1/2 inch wheel spacer on the right rear. That will free it up. Putting a softer spring in the left front will definitely free it up. Those would be my two go-tos. I'm not really big on making real, suspension changes. I mean, you could put, more angle in your right lower rod. The problem is sometimes those deals have more of an effect elsewhere too. So the advantage of the spring, it only affects it on corner entry. So if you soften that left front spring, it's not going to affect the car anywhere else. Wheel spacer, yeah, it could it could loosen the car up a little bit off the corner, but that would be my two go-tos. Ben, IMCA Sport Mod, best way to tighten a car without dropping right rear trailing arm. Well, that's a great question, Ben. One thing about it, even though you wouldn't think it would make that much difference, but I definitely move the rear end side to side a little bit. And you would be surprised if you moved that rear end to the left a quarter of an inch. Now, a quarter of an inch doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge on a race car, moving that right rear wheel inboard a quarter of an inch. It makes a ton of difference. You can't use wheel spacers on a sport mod, so the only thing you can really do is move that rear end around. That's probably the thing that I would use the most. Um, what thoughts do you have, Chad?
Yeah, I was going to go right to the panel bar too, just because they can't use the wheel spacers. So, without dropping the trailing arm, that's probably one of the most popular changes I would say would be the panhard bar, or a shock change, something simple like that. And even putting a longer trailing arm on the right rear just to slow that wheelbase change. If you want to keep the drive angle in that trailing arm and don't want to lower it, sometimes just putting a longer bar on it changes the transition in the middle of the corner a little bit, to tighten it up a little bit. But yeah, that moving the rear end is key in that sport mod, I feel, just because they can't use wheel spacers.
Well, and the thing of it is, like if you're running a crate motor, you definitely don't want to drop that bar down because it's just going to tighten the car up too much, and you don't have the horsepower to try to pull it back up. With an open motor, you kind of can, but we've found that keeping that trailing arm with a little angle in it definitely helps the car rotate in the middle better, and which is going to get you speed up off the corner and just give you mile per hour. So tightening it up other ways other than dropping that. Yeah, I used to do that quite a bit, but I don't. I very seldom ever drop that right rear. Well, in fact, I very seldom ever change the left rear. I mean, uh, rear trailing arms. I change steer. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Lead and trail, but other than that, actually don't change much as far as angles go. That's for sure.
Well, we got a little break. We actually launched a board game. I don't know if you've seen that, Bob, but
Oh, I did. I seen that on Facebook.
yeah, we made a board game, which so one side is dirt and one side is asphalt to please everybody. So kind of hard to show on the screen, but it's got spaces on there where there's events. So if you land on one of the things that says an event, you get to draw a card. Like this one says on track rivalry, you pick somebody to lose a turn. But how it works is you roll the dice, and if you roll a 4, then you pick the number. If you pick 23, then you'd have to name a driver that's number 23 in 15 seconds. And if you get a driver name, then you can move whatever you roll. And then if you roll on the event card, then you would flip that over and see what that brings. So kind of started as a fluke. I was walking through the shop one day and I was arm curling apart. I don't remember what it was, but I was like 89, 90, 91, and somebody hollered out Ty Majeski. And we all kind of just stood there and looked at each other and we're like, is this a game?
Yeah.
Oh, so we drew it on cardboard. This was 4 years ago. We drew it on cardboard. We played it at break, and we had a pretty good time. And then, so for 4 years, we've been just kind of kicking this around, and they convinced me to actually debut it. So we did a soft launch there at the Dome to see what everybody thought of it, and sold quite a few and had a lot of fun with it. So we're excited. Not billet trickery. Not what we're normally known for here with cool parts. But hey, who cares, right? It's a fun game. So.
Excellent Christmas idea, and excellent for racers. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be a great thing to do Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Okay, Chester, ideal pull bar length for a Northern Sport Mod. In my opinion, somewhere between 28 and 30 inches. I think that's very conventional. Um, I think ours is actually 28 and a half or something like that. And the 28 and a half is just because to get the right pinion angle, we ended up having to lengthen it a little bit more or whatever compared to what the thing is. Now, we're going to be working on a different bracket for the rear end from what we are actually running. I think there's, we've kind of, since it's a solid bar, we kind of just think that there's not any magic there. And that's one of our goals for 2025. And we're going to try to build some of that adjustability in Taylor's new car and try to do some testing with that. Maybe there's nothing there. I don't know. I mean, I know it makes a big difference on a modified with the pull bar. So I can't see why it wouldn't make some difference there. Bud, how much front spring split do you recommend on a stock car? It kind of depends on how tight you want the car to be. I don't like anything more. 200 is probably my favorite because of the stiffness of those springs. I know there's some guys that are running 300 pounds, and it kind of just all depends on what you're wanting to achieve. Um, the common number that I see a lot on the left front is like an 1100. Where depending on what this new ride height rule, like what they had last year, some guys are having to go quite a bit softer on the right front. And so that's where you kind of get that 300-pound variance. We aren't that way. We're 1100 and 900. Some guys are at 850. But in that neighborhood, I think is a pretty good common thing. Ben's got another question. What are your thoughts on gearing, such as hitting the chip hard or laying off for the ground speed? In my opinion, it really depends on the actual racetrack. If you've got a racetrack that has a lot of momentum, then I really wouldn't want to hit that chip too soon. If you've got a racetrack that the corners are fairly slow, I would probably want to be on the chip a little sooner and then kind of just drive it accordingly off the chip to get you into the corner. That seems to work pretty good. But the majority of the time, the guys that are hitting the chip at the flag stand, I mean, they're losing so much speed that, it can't carry them into the corner. The other big thing is the fact that now, with the open motor stuff and the sport mod stuff, I believe that makes a big difference too, because once again, they've got more RPMs, so they'll actually let you drive into the corner a little bit further. And now, like in the IMCA, now this in the modifieds, they're going to use that concept motor this year. I don't know much about that concept motor. I mean, for years they've had the crate motor in there, and like I said, from what I have found, the guys that are hitting the chip hard, it costs you too much speed. Don, can you tighten up tighten sport mod? Can you tighten up sport mod up? If you are running 3-inch offsets in the heat race, then in the feature, can you put a 4-inch offset? You can. Um, that's going to tighten it up a ton. Changing that right rear wheel 1 inch is a huge, huge change. Myself, I'm not a fan of it. I would rather take my 3-inch wheel and move my rear end a quarter of an inch to the right to tighten the car up rather than, um, but I've never been a fan of that 4-inch wheel. I mean, I know there's some thoughts about, you know, using a different rear end width and then putting a 4-inch wheel in the left rear because you can get more traction out of it. I I don't know. Someone will have to prove that one to me. I'm not completely convinced in that situation. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, most of the time an inch is I mean, that's a big swing anymore. As close as balanced as the cars are, an inch change on anything is huge, and I think that's too much, especially later in the night if you're looking for grip in the slick, and then you put that 1 inch different wheel offset on there, that's going to tighten the right rear so much on entry that then you're going to have to bend it. Plus the pace slows down, so I I think you're going to over tighten and be too tight, and then if it's dry slick and you got a shear traction, once you shear it, it's over with.
Yeah, I think I don't think you'd be happy with that change. Just like what Chad said, the racetrack's going to slow down, so your speed's going to slow down. And what happens is we tighten these cars up too tight, and then they don't want to turn. And then of course, the driver is going to make it turn. Well, how's he going to make it turn? Well, he's going to do that with the throttle. Well, then what's the throttle going to do? It's going to break traction. Now you're done. I mean, when it's slick, you start all over. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And so I just, yeah, I've never been a fan of that. It's too big of a change, in my opinion. Jason, let's talk about pull bar loads. Um, wait a minute. Uh, what do you think is ideal for a UMP modified and an IMCA type modified with a crate motor? Um, you know, go for it, Chad.
Well, that's two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So a UMP modified, big horsepower, sticky tire takes a lot of control. So we've only ever been able to make a spring or a Belleville spring work on the UMP cars. They have so much power and so much traction. They just kill the pucks if you just try and run pucks by themselves. So pretty much on a UMP modified, we've got, I'd say, 90% of our guys on a spring bar, and that thing stops at about 2,400 pounds ish. All the pull bar loads we're all picking up. The weight of the car is 2,200 to 2,300 pounds. That's the max that thing's going to pull. Unless you're on a hammer down heavy track, you're going to see 2,500 pounds of load sometimes, but so generally we set the pull bar loads to the weight of the device. So the weight of the car is about the max you're going to pull. And then as the night goes away and the track gets slippery, you lose that grip. So that number actually drops a little bit. So the crate motor is a lot better with a puck or a puck spring combination like what Bob runs, with a little bit softer spring instead of the big heavy spring like a UMP car on his bars. But the IMCA crate is way better with a puck, or a puck can live on that, is what I'm trying to say. So, and tunability wise is probably the spring probably wins that as far as tunability. So, but there's a lot of different pull bars, and I mean, we've built just about everything known to man other than an air chamber. But, there's a lot of things there. A lot of it is feel, and Bob, I think, agrees with me. The spring bar decells harder, so you need more decel control with your
Yeah.
shock at the top, like your 9010 shock. And some drivers don't like that feel of that hard decel, so then they're automatically going to run the puck on the crate cars. And I'd still run a 90-10 shock with the puck bar, and it would just be a little less valving, so you got a little bit of control there. And man, there's a lot of guys that are tuning with that shock with the pull bar that are really learning stuff there. That's pretty cool too. And so I guess that's the biggest difference between the IMC and the UMP.
Yeah, it just all depends on driver, how they like that car to enter the corner. And that is a little bit of a drawback to a spring bar is it tends to get in and can kind of upset the car a little bit, doesn't stick the car quite as good. You know, where a puck bar definitely you de-excel and you got right rear grip right now. And so there's not that delayed action in the spring. So it, and it depends. I mean, some guys like that thing to be freer getting in. Um, like Chad said, we've tried quite a few different ones, and a lot of it still kind of depends on driver preference. Gosh, I don't remember now. Bobby was telling me that some guy, fairly big name guy, that won some race here a couple 3 weeks ago. And he says, yeah, he's on our spring bar. I said, really? Well, I mean, I would have thought that they'd have been on something different, but no, they actually were still on a spring bar because that he didn't like the tightness of the biscuit bar. So once again, driver preference. Jim, half-inch spacer works great on my UMP car. Oh yeah, definitely. Um, that's kind of what we play with even on the modified car, usually is a half-inch spacer. Um, when we're talking about the sport mods and moving the rear end a quarter of an inch, and I'm a little bit leery of moving that rear end that full half inch because of course with the way the rules are set up with that 9-inch rear end, the springs have to be straight up and down, and if you go moving it a half an inch, then there's going to be some angle in those springs, and some tech inspectors might not like that as well. So the quarter of an inch seems to be good, but no, half-inch spacer is pretty much what we do all the time, and we play with it. The left rear definitely tightens it up. A lot of times we'll run to qualify in a modified, we'll run the half-inch spacer on the right rear to get the car freer in the heat race, and then feature time wise, we take it off and put the half-inch spacer on the left rear. So definitely tightens it up. You bet. Thanks, Jim. Well, we've got once again. I want to remind everybody about the chassis schools coming up on January 17th. Is our 2-link 3-link school, basically sport mod, limited modified school. It's the 17th and 18th. 4-link school, which Chad will be at, is January 31st and February 1st. And once again, we're going to have Tom Berry Jr. is going to be one of our guest speakers for that school. Stock car school is the week after the Daytona 500, February 21st and 22nd. Once again, we've got Paul Berger, Troy Jervitz, and Mike Nichols are going to be there. And then, of course, we've got our CRS school, Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio school, March 14th and 15th. That will be out in Eldridge, Pennsylvania at Joel Smith's Close Racing Supply. Always enjoy going out there. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's just an awesome place. I mean, if you want to go somewhere just to see an awesome place, it's just awesome. It's a dream shop. I mean, that's just truly a dream shop. And if I ever win the lottery, of course, I'd have to play first. That would be what I would build. Definitely keep that in mind. Excellent gifts, for that hard to get race car driver, and of course, definitely want to get Chad's board game. That's for sure. But You can also look at schools. And of course, Chad's got a lot of neat tools on his website. We've got quite a few tools, a lot of weird stuff on our website, but some cool stuff. So, if you're making some last minute, and we got gift certificates, and I'm sure you do too, don't you, Chad?
Not really. We haven't had
Okay.
to call for that, but I mean, you
Well,
can.
anyway, so if we still got time, and we can get stuff out to you. Definitely, though, you're going to want to probably be on it fairly soon. Um, RJ, have a Merry Christmas. Well, I appreciate that, RJ. RJ had a great year this year. Won a track championship out there. He's been working on that for a little while, and just had a good year. So congratulations on your year, RJ. Congratulations on being a great customer. We sure appreciate that. So you have a Merry Christmas too. Jason, reason I asked about pull bar is I have a buddy that bought a Cade Dillard car. Of course, it was an IMCA car. We are in UMP country. Car has a Weir's puck bar on it. Car extremely erratic and carrying the left front way too much. I've been trying to convince him to change to a spring bar and get back to the center of the rear end instead of being actual center line. You know, first thing I would actually do is I'd call Cade. He built the car. You know, he's extremely knowledgeable. Um, that would be my suggestion. But like Chad said, the UMP, it seems like those cars tend to like a spring bar a little better. They've got a lot better tires, so they can stand to be freed up a little bit getting into the corner. I would definitely agree with the fact. Um, being back in the center of the rear end instead of behind the axle. Um, Depends on how far you're behind the axle, but I mean, I don't think that's being behind the axle with a spring bar wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, if you're only an inch or so, I don't think that would hurt you at all. Um,
Yeah, I assume that what you're saying is you bought this car as an IMCA car and it had the big puck on it, the big biscuit, which isn't going to work on a UMP car. So I would definitely, if that is the case, and you bought a car from an IMCA guy and it has the big puck on it, I'd definitely put a spring bar on it. And I'm pretty sure that Cade would probably agree on that on a UMP car.
yeah. Well, I mean, Cade's the $100,000 man, so I mean, boy, he'd be the first. He would be my very first call. Well, we've got a little bit of time yet. Anybody else have any more questions? Like I said, the only thing that I've really got going on is the schools. I know Chad's got a lot of events going on, just different places that they have to be. And so Jason says, yes, that is exactly right. Big puck bar.
Yeah,
Yeah, that, on a UMP car with that tire, yeah, that could be a little bit erratic. I'm not totally convinced that that's the reason you're carrying the left front. Um,
yeah, there's definitely something else going on there too.
yeah, there's that when you're carrying the left front, either the panhard bar is too low, the car's hooked on the right rear too hard and laying over in the right rear. So either it needs a little more right rear spring,
Right
rear
top,
end's too far to the left.
right top
Uh,
rod angle.
yep, top rod angle. Um, so I don't think. switching to the spring is going to fix what your issue is 100%. I think there's more going on there. And like I said, Kate could definitely help you with that. So you're telling me earlier the boys got to do some ice fishing, huh?
Yeah, they were on the ice yesterday.
Awesome.
I said I'll wait till there's 7 or 8 inches.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I'd like a foot or so.
Yeah.
Um, that ice fishing thing, that can be a chilly deal. But I only went ice fishing with Garrett probably a couple years ago, maybe. And of course, by the time you get in that tent, you got all those heaters going on. Heck, it was really a pretty good time. Now getting out to the middle of the lake and all that stuff were a little on the chilly side, but it wasn't too bad. Now keep in mind, I'm kind of a fair weather guy, uh, but it was fun. I see he was out on one of our local lakes, checking out some ice here. I seen that on Facebook, and I was kind of thinking, it hasn't been for us here in Iowa or in central Iowa. It just hasn't been that cold enough to make that ice super thick. Finally got our first B&B stock car with the new frame on it in the other day. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm hearing good things about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very nice piece. I don't know. There's some people that have different opinions on flex and stuff like that, and I don't know as low as that is. I question if that's going to really be a big factor, but whatever. But it looks good. I mean, it definitely looks nice. Um, what do you guys think about rear centered pull 3-link on dirt? Um, well, that's kind of what we run in the sport mod, and pretty much everything that we do is pretty well centered in the rear end, and our actual pickup point on the rear end is pretty much centered in the housing itself. So yeah, it's pretty well centered.
I think they're talking about the center pole, like it's an asphalt thing, so it's a J bar that wraps around the rear end, hooks on the center of the rear, not being centered underneath the tube on the bottom. This would be centered out the back, um, and depending on what class you run, it's I don't know if it's legal. It's definitely not IMCA, definitely not WSOTA. I'm not sure about dirt car, so I'm not sure where you could even run it. But it definitely would increase traction for sure because you're making that bar longer for sure. But I'm not sure. I'd read the rule book first before you test the center pole stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not that familiar with that. Matt wants to know, do you think the strange twist axles help out in a stock car? If they help out in a modified or they help out in anything, they're definitely going to help out in a stock car.
Yeah, if they're legal, that's traction for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely look into it for sure. I mean, like I said, I think an IMCA stock car, I think they're legal.
Yeah.
So definitely, I would consider that. Now I know the sport mod ones have to be solid, and they do make a solid version. How how they actually work, I'm not super sure, but yeah, they definitely are good. He has a CR USA.
Crusa. Yeah, I'm not sure about. I haven't read the Crusa rules. I don't know much about them.
Yeah, Colin, I wouldn't. Sorry, I can't help you because I'm not that familiar with those rules. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, the axle thing is pretty interesting. You know that we were testing that last year, and we had three different manufacturers of a solid axle, and they were 400 pounds apart from the softest to the stiffest. And these were all the standard stock solid axles.
Really?
Just saying.
Huh.
Spring rate and traction. And keep in mind that an axle is a spring and does have a life.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Well, I definitely know that if you put the wrong axle in the left side that's supposed to be in the right side and vice versa, they definitely make the car do some strange stuff. Let's see. Chris wants to know, Chad, will you be at the stock car school?
When's the stock car class again?
Like the February 21st and 22nd.
What were we talking about before we came on?
Yeah, I think you
Me,
mentioned them.
that would be like, God, what would that
That would
be?
make it like 7 in a row.
That'd be like seven weeks in a row. I don't know if my wife is. She put up with it 20 years ago. I don't know if she's going to put up with it anymore. But
Yeah.
no, we're aggressive, and we got a lot of shows in January and a lot of shows in March. March we're doing 6 in 4 weeks, and but I don't know if Bob convinces me, maybe I'll run down to the stock car
I'll
class.
tell you what, yeah, you'd have a good time. I mean, there's not a lot of rear suspension questions, but it's a good group. I mean, I enjoy the stock car one just as much as I do all the rest of them, and of course, Mike and Paul make it interesting, and so I mean, it's just it's a fun time, but yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Jet wants to know what are your thoughts on a longer right rear trailing arm on a B-Mod Sport Mod around 20 to 22 inches? Well, go ahead, Chad.
I'm a fan just because like we did that one year, and like we were talking earlier, keeping the drive angle in the right rear. You always the instant thing you want to do is drop it on the frame, get traction, but it kills that roll steer. Like Bob said earlier, if that when that car rolls over and that the trailing arm has the angle, and that's pushing the rear end back on the right rear, gives you that rotation through the middle of the corner to turn through the middle. So when you dump the front of it down, it kills that. It actually brings the rear end forward and makes it super tight. So it's one of the most common changes in the right rear is to drop it on the frame. But I really like keeping the angle and putting a longer rod on, just like you're saying, Jed, is put a longer rod on, and that just slows that transition just a touch through the middle. And then it doesn't just make such a quick change on the wheelbase. So I'm a huge fan. If there ain't a rule where they got to be within X amount of whatever, I like right rear long trailing arms for grip.
Well, I know it's pretty common in the Wissota market in the Midwest Modified to have a longer right rear than left rear. Now those guys, they have that 5 degree difference in trailing arm length,
Yeah.
so it's a huge, in my opinion, it'd be a huge advantage because you just wouldn't change that much. Chris says he understands completely. If not,
It's funny, when I leave, most of the time we sing a song that was popular back in the 90s is Can't Stop, I'm Addicted to the Shindig. So I do like to be on the road.
yeah. Well, it's fun for a while. Troy, been running your shop for years and finally got one of your modifieds. Can't wait for this season. Thanks for all your help. Well, I appreciate that, Troy. Um, yeah, definitely. We're looking forward to helping you, and it's nice that you got one of the modifieds. That definitely. Those cars are nice race cars. I tell you, I seen Taylor's cars for sale, the one that she's running now, and that's a 23 car, and I tell you what, that car is just on rails, and yeah, I tried to convince them that they shouldn't sell that. They should keep them both, but I lost that conversation. But I think it had something to do with money or something. I don't know. So, but definitely, she's looking forward to the new car. There's going to be some new things that are changing, but you know, they've her and her crew have really got that thing working good. Like I told her, it doesn't matter to me as long as she's out there doing a great job and making us look good. Whatever we need to do, no problem. All right. Well, we have hit the bell. And once again, everybody, have a Merry Christmas and a great New Year. And uh, wish everybody the best. And we will see you on January 6th.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.